Discover 12 amazing Stoic lessons to set hidden boundaries and transform your life forever. Sarah's hands trembled as she wiped the dust from the cover of her father's journal, a relic lost in the attic's forgotten recesses. It felt dangerous, almost like unearthing a skeleton. With her life spinning ever tighter in the relentless grip of 2 jobs and a relentless boss, she yearned for anything that could bring clarity to the chaos that was her daily grind. Each night at the diner, her overbearing manager barked orders and squeezed every drop of energy out of her. "More coffee," he'd holler, oblivious to the exhaustion etching deeper lines into her face. Each of his belittling comments clawed at her resolve, forcing her to question if she had the strength to stand against him, to carve out a space for herself between those job shifts and school runs with her son, Jacob. The quiet solidity of the journal felt alien, promising yet intimidating, as she flipped through the pages. 12 Stoic lessons, wisdom from her father meant to instill strength during turbulent times. But could ancient wisdom guide her through the chaos of modern life? Questions churned in her mind like a relentless storm. Was she a failure for even needing guidance? Could these lessons help her stand up for herself and for Jacob when every fiber of her being shook with self-doubt? Each turn of the page sank like a stone in her stomach. It was both a glimmer of hope and a reminder of all the ways she'd been held back. Then came the discovery of her first moral dilemma. If she truly wanted to change the narrative, she'd need to confront her boss's oppressive style instead of shrinking down like a wilting flower. The thought of facing him sent prickles of anxiety through her veins. What if he retaliated? What if he made her life even more unbearable? But as she read her father's words, a flicker of determination lit within her, pushing aside the whirlpool of dread. She made the effort, gradually standing taller each day, confronting her boss's condescension with new strength. Yet, just as she seemed to find her footing, Jacob came home one afternoon, eyes red-rimmed and voice trembling, shattered after being bullied at school. The fear coalesced into a heavy fog of anguish, pressing against her chest. She had enough struggles of her own, how could she help him navigate his? The room felt like it was closing in, every lesson of stoicism crashing against her walls. Was she even equipped to guide her son, to teach him how to build his own boundaries when hers felt so shaky? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The turmoil forced Sarah into an unexpected alliance with Emily, the school librarian. Soft-spoken and gentle, she seemed to understand the depths of Sarah's worry. Inspired by Emily's calm encouragement, she signed up for a community program aimed at personal growth. Here, among fellow parents who wore their own scars, she began sharing stories, her voice shaking but gaining strength. Yet the darkness loomed ever nearer. While sorting through a deeper layer of her father's journal, she stumbled upon letters that unveiled a turbulent, unjust past that collided with her own struggles. The emotional weight made her breath hitch. Like a dam threatening to burst, secrets long buried pressed upon her. Could she really take these lessons and use them to face the real demons in her life and her father's? Standing before that room of parents and teachers, her heart raced as every doubt surfaced, the very ones echoing Jacob's fears. Could she shatter her own boundaries? And step through the veil of pain? To honor her father's legacy while forging her own path felt suffocatingly impossible, and she could feel the contours of anxiety pressing her towards the precipice. What would it take for her to transform this moment, to guide Jacob, to confront a lifetime of doubts and bitterness? Could today be the day she finally emerged? The room spun in anticipation, and as she readied herself to speak, it was no longer just her truth, it was a moment that could rip open the seams of their future. Sarah inhaled deeply, her heart thundering against her ribcage. She had spent so many years silencing herself, shrinking in the shadows. This was unfamiliar territory, standing before an audience, raw emotions simmering at the surface. Her father's lessons flickered in her mind like a guide, urging her to grasp the reins of her life with both hands. The first lesson, she began, her voice barely above a whisper, is about accepting what we cannot control. She felt every set of eyes in the room fixate on her, every gaze an unspoken challenge. There it was, her voice quaked, a fray in her resolve. Yet she pushed forward, recalling Jacob's turmoil. They were not just her words, they were the lifelines that could bridge the distance between her and her son. Her voice grew steadier as she spoke about boundaries, the invisible barricades that protect our dignity and self-worth. She shared her story, weaving through her struggles at the diner and the unwarranted pressure from her manager, vividly recounting the moment she had dared to stand up for herself. With each detail, she felt the layers of shame begin to peel away. Unshakable resolve washed over her as she became aware of her growing courage. As she continued speaking, Sarah noticed the reactions around her. A few parents nodded in solidarity, while others clenched their fists, their faces etched with recognition. It dawned on her, her battle was not fought solely in isolation. Others shared similar struggles, wearing their own burdens in the quiet desperation of their everyday lives. This moment transformed into an unanticipated connection, a tapestry woven from shared pain. But the revelation came with anxiety. Weren't the lessons she brought to the surface echoes of her father's own failures? Could she truly find strength in the lessons he had tried and sometimes faltered to impart? The inner conflict gnawed at her as she stepped down from the podium. Their collective gaze lingered, searching for further clarity. As the meeting wrapped up, Sarah felt a thrum of energy pulse through the room. Each parent approached her not with judgment, but with appreciation. Their stories unfurled like petals, revealing the various ways they too had battled with choices that seemed insurmountable. She realized this was exactly her father's intent, to cultivate resilience through vulnerability. Yet just as Sarah began to embrace this deepening understanding, a familiar heaviness enveloped her heart. How could she take this newfound strength and channel it into teaching Jacob about boundaries? Would her words be more than just echoes of wisdom if wielded in a personal confrontation? Returning home, she found Jacob sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by his toys, but his expression was distant, a mirror of her own turmoil. She took a breath before settling beside him. "Hey, buddy," her voice softened, "can we talk about today?" Jacob looked up, his eyes reflecting the uncertainty she felt not just as a mother but as an individual. Could she help him navigate this storm of insecurities when she herself was in the throes of doubt? "Can you tell me what happened at school?" For a moment, silence hung thick between them, it mirrored her own apprehension. The fear of unpacking the very issues she was wrestling with felt like a canyon between them, a gap she couldn't bear. But Jacob's eyes widened, as if sensing her struggle, and he began to speak. She listened intently, a silent mantra brewing within her, she would not shy away. As he poured out his heart, Sarah felt a stirring within herself, a realization that perhaps the very act of listening would fortify both of them. The resolve began to form. Not just for herself but for Jacob too. She would use her father's lessons, not as a prescription to live by, but as a path they would carve together, a journey toward understanding their own worth. But just as they settled into their conversation, a sudden knock echoed through the stillness of the house. Sarah's heart raced as she exchanged an anxious glance with Jacob. Who could it be? The uncertainty loomed larger than her previous fears. As she approached the door, she realized the moment of truth had arrived once again. An external challenge to her growing resolve awaited her beyond the threshold. With her hand resting upon the cool metal of the doorknob, Sarah felt the tension coil within her like a tightly sprung trap. She hesitated, heart racing, an instinctive urge to turn away. Yet, as she glanced back at Jacob, his innocent eyes searching hers, a surge of determination broke through her fear. She couldn't afford to shy away. Not now. Opening the door revealed a familiar face, and her anticipation gave way to a rush of complicated emotions. It was Mrs. Foster, a member of the school board, her presence a stark reminder of the world that had long been intertwined with Sarah's struggles. Mrs. Foster held a clipboard, eyes framed with a mixture of concern and authority. "Sarah," she began, her voice steady but with a hint of urgency, "may I come in? There are some issues regarding Jacob at school that we need to discuss." Sarah felt a clutch of anxiety in her chest but nodded, stepping aside. As Mrs. Foster entered, a torrent of thoughts spiraled through Sarah's mind. What issues? Would this reset the progress she felt they had made during that meeting? She led Mrs. Foster into the living room, the chaos of toys a stark reflection of the internal mess she was bravely trying to decipher. Jacob, sensing the shift in her energy, shuffled closer, peering curiously at the newcomer.
"Jacob," Mrs. Foster said gently, "could you give us a moment?"
The request echoed Sarah's own childhood, a memory of being sidelined, but she held her breath and gave a slight nod. Jacob retreated, his feet padding softly down the hall, leaving Sarah alone with the imposing presence of authority. "Sarah," Mrs. Foster started, her voice softer now, almost empathetic, "I understand that Jacob has been facing some challenges with the other kids.
It seems he has been having trouble asserting himself.
We want to ensure every child feels included and safe."
With those words, Sarah felt the walls constrict.
She had dreaded hearing about Jacob's social struggles, knowing that it mirrored her own inadequacies.
"What kind of challenges?"
she pressed, her voice a frayed whisper. "He has been quiet, hesitant to engage, and there has been some teasing from a few classmates. It seems to hurt him deeply, and I worry about the impact it might have on his self-esteem." A suffocating silence wrapped around them.
In that moment, Sarah's mind raced, cycling between anger and fear.
But more than anything, it ignited the flames of her earlier resolve. She had learned so much about boundaries, not only for herself but to protect Jacob as well.
"Mrs. Foster," she started, steadying her breathing, "what can we do?"
"I refuse to let him feel powerless." The determination in her voice surprised even herself. As she spoke, a clarity emerged. She wasn't just looking for answers, she was stepping into her role as an advocate for Jacob, much like she had when standing before the parents at the meeting. "We could organize some group activities that promote cooperation and confidence," Mrs. Foster suggested. "But it's imperative that he also learns how to stand up for himself."
Sarah's heart quickened. "I can help with that.
He needs to know he has the right to express himself." With each word, she felt strengthened, the lesson she conveyed to others bleeding back into her own life, reinforcing the idea that boundaries are not just personal shields, but tools for empowerment. After Mrs. Foster left, the house felt lighter, as if a burden had been shed.
Sarah found Jacob in his room, quietly playing.
The very act of stepping up in their moment of need filled her with newfound resolve. She sat down beside him, ready to take the next crucial step. "Jacob," she began, her voice firm yet warm, "I want to teach you something important: how to embrace your boundaries." But as Jacob turned to her, the uncertainty from earlier lingered in the air, casting shadows over her newfound courage. The real challenge had only just begun, and Sarah understood that embracing this lesson was also a test of her own strength. The moment hung between them, heavy with potential and promise, but also uncertainty.
How would Jacob respond to her guidance? Would they truly navigate this together, or would doubt bridge their connection once again?
As she locked eyes with him, Sarah knew their conversation would only deepen, and the outcomes of that day were yet unwritten. There was more at stake than just parenting. This was about redefining what boundaries meant for both their lives as they endeavored into the unknown.
And as they embarked on this journey together, a question echoed softly in her mind: how could she truly empower Jacob while continuing to confront her own hidden fears?
The air felt charged as Sarah readied herself for the discussions that lay ahead. She took a moment to observe Jacob, lost in his world of toys, his brow furrowed in concentration. Everything about the room, the scattered dolls and colorful building blocks, highlighted the chaotic beauty of childhood, but to Sarah, it also emphasized the fragility of Jacob's emotional state. "Jacob," she said, her voice steady.
"Can we talk about what happened at school? About your friends?"
She watched as he slowed his play, tentative curiosity replacing his earlier concentration. He looked up, uncertainty flickering in his gaze.
"You mean, the kids who hurt my feelings?"
"Yes," she affirmed, choosing her words carefully. "It's important to understand that it's okay to feel upset when that happens. But we can also learn how to express those feelings and talk back, in a way that protects us." Jacob shifted, the small weight of his body seeming to bear the gravitas of the conversation. "But I don't want to make anyone mad," he whispered. The admission hit Sarah hard, resonating within her own fears.
How many times had she held back truth for fear of conflict? It was her own childhood echoing painfully back. "I get that, Jacob. I used to feel the same way."
She paused, reflecting on how vulnerability had often felt like the easier, safer path. In this moment, she recognized that she had the chance to break that cycle both for Jacob and herself.
What if we practiced? What if we came up with some things you could say if someone is teasing you? His brow relaxed a notch, the idea of collaboration bridging the gulf of uncertainty. Like what?
Okay, how about this, she said, riffing off a memory of a self-help book she'd read a while back.
If someone says something mean, you could say, "That's not nice. Please stop."
It's simple, but powerful.
You're showing them you don't like it, and that you have a right to speak up.
Jacob considered this, frowning in concentration.
What if they don't listen?
The potential for rejection loomed, a reminder that she had to confront her own fears as she guided him.
Then we can think of a few more lines, and remember, that's when you find a teacher or me. You are never alone in this. The truth wrapped around Sarah like a warm blanket.
Each word she shared felt like an excavation of her own emotional armor. She was teaching him to assert his boundaries while simultaneously inching toward her own. As he nodded, a hint of determination brightened his features.
Can we practice now? He asked, eagerness shimmering in his voice.
Sarah felt a rush of pride but also heightened anxiety as she prepared for this exercise.
All right, let us pretend. I'll say something mean to you, and you respond, okay?
Okay. Tension crackled in the space as they began their impromptu role-play. She played the part of a classmate, delivering a cutting remark. Much to her surprise, Jacob responded swiftly, recalling the lines they had discussed with a newfound assertiveness.
Stop it. That's not nice, he declared, his voice unexpectedly firm.
In that moment, Sarah felt the stirring of empowerment blossoming within her, not just for Jacob but also for herself. This small exchange revealed untapped resilience, a hint of the strength forged through accountability and courageous conversations.
Great job,
she encouraged, her heart swelling.
How did that feel?
Good.
I felt stronger.
A rush of warmth enveloped them both, but underlying it was a looming thought: would this moment become a mere fleeting victory, or would it build towards something more substantial?
Sarah understood that while this was a step forward, a more formidable challenge awaited.
She recalled the teasing, the feelings of worthlessness that flooded her own childhood.
Are you ready to try again, or do you want to think a minute?
She asked, keenly aware that the journey was ongoing.
I want to keep practicing,
Jacob replied, determination returning to his face.
As they continued their exercise, Sarah could sense her own fears retreating.
Every time they worked together, she not only helped him navigate his feelings, she chipped away at her own insecurities.
But just as their confidence built, an unsettling thought began gathering momentum in her mind: how would Jacob navigate the realities of school beyond her watch? And what if her fears, still lurking in the corners of her mind, were not finished with her yet?
With the stakes rising, she knew one pivotal realization awaited: confronting the fear was just the beginning. The true challenge lay in the execution of the tools they had forged together.
Let us take a break, Sarah said, feeling her own resolve solidify. This is only the beginning.
As Jacob nodded, she inhaled deeply, envisioning a path where she would not just advocate for him but also reclaim her own strength.
Uncertainty still loomed over them, whispering questions about whether they could overcome the external pressures together.
But one truth resonated amidst the doubts: something had shifted. They were no longer just mother and son facing the world, they were partners in a fight for confidence and boundaries.
What would be their next step in this journey of empowerment? And just as her thoughts solidified, another question struck her: would the upcoming school event open doors or uncover deeper fears for both Jacob and herself?
The afternoon light crept into the living room as Sarah and Jacob sat in a comfortable silence.
The quiet seemed surreal after the storm of emotions they had just navigated.
Jacob's toys lay strewn around them like remnants of a battlefield, yet their transformation remained palpable. He had taken his first steps toward asserting himself, and in turn, she had experienced a flicker of self-realization. It was easy to focus on Jacob's progress and overlook the weight that burdened her own shoulders. She fidgeted with the edge of a cushion, the fibers pulling her attention as she thought about the upcoming school event and the inevitable social dynamics that would unfold. The fear that had lurked within her for years felt amplified, and she couldn't dismiss it any longer.
What if Jacob faced rejection? What if he experienced the same helplessness she had felt? In a moment of clarity, Sarah acknowledged she was at a critical junction.
She needed to examine her own feelings of unworthiness, the fears that whispered lies into her ear whenever she considered stepping beyond her comfort zone. It was easy to tell Jacob to stand firm and voice his feelings, yet standing firm herself remained a daunting prospect.
"Jacob," she began, her voice steady yet tremulous, "how do you think I could practice expressing my feelings too?"
The question surprised her, a commitment to transparency igniting a spark of hope. He looked up, his eyes wide, a reflection of innocence mingled with a newfound sense of responsibility.
"You mean like when someone upsets you?"
"Yes, exactly."
"Can you think of a time when someone did something that made me feel bad?"
He pondered for a moment before his expression brightened.
"What about when Sarah at the PTA meeting talked over you? You looked really mad."
The memory flooded back, and Sarah felt a rush of shame over her inability to assert herself. But there was something empowering in his recollection too. It felt like an opportunity to model resilience rather than inaction.
"Yes, I should have said something, shouldn't I?"
Jacob nodded earnestly, and she could see that he had absorbed not just her words but the values they represented.
"You should say, 'Stop talking while I'm speaking,' right? Or, 'I'd like to finish my thought.'"
His innocent suggestions carried the weight of wisdom. The ease with which he spoke navigated her fears, revealing a path forward.
Here she was, not only teaching him but learning from him in return.
It was both humbling and exhilarating.
"Okay," she said, excitement welling within her. "Let us practice my responses. You can pretend to be that person in the meeting." As they launched into a dialogue, Sarah felt a powerful shift.
Each time he interrupted her, she interjected with her new phrases. The more they practiced, the more she felt her confidence building like a muscle exercising for the first time. Each repetition chipped away at the fear constricted around her heart, slowly transforming doubt into courage.
"Sarah, you're not listening."
His voice rang out, mimicking the tension of their previous conversation. But instead of faltering, her resolve surged forward. "I'm speaking now.
Please let me finish, it's important."
With every assertion, she witnessed Jacob's eyes light up with admiration and pride, a powerful mirror reflecting her advancement. After several rounds of practice, Sarah sat back, breathing heavily as if she had just completed a marathon.
"Thank you, Jacob. I really appreciate you helping me."
The small boy beamed, the unexpected role reversal bolstering both their spirits, yet apprehension still danced in the periphery of Sarah's mind. She couldn't shake the nagging uncertainty about how her newly formed voice would be received in the playground of adults.
Could she transform this breakthrough into a lasting change, or would age-old doubts resurface when faced with real confrontation?
The looming school event seemed to carry the weight of an impending storm, and she needed to prepare for the emotional fallout.
"Do you think I can do it?"
she asked Jacob, her vulnerability
emerging softly.
His smile widened, unwavering.
"Of course. Just like I did."
In that moment, Sarah grasped what she needed to do.
She deconfront any judgments, recalibrate her internal dialogue, and practice being unyielding in her truth.
As they wrapped up their session, unease clung tightly to her core, spiraling into the realization that the true test awaited just beyond the horizon. Would she have the fortitude to assert herself amid a crowd on behalf of both herself and Jacob? The next days would unveil the answers, and her determination solidified. After all, the lesson she had been teaching Jacob applied to her too. Finding one's voice was a continuous battle, one she resolved to win alongside him. Yet, with unanswered questions looming, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something significant was about to shift, something that could either strengthen their bond or fracture it further. Would she be ready to face the unexpected trials ahead? The morning sun rose like a herald of new possibilities, casting a gentle glow over Sarah's living room. She sipped her coffee, allowing its warmth to envelop her, yet unease churned in her stomach.
Today was the day of the meeting.
The idea of facing a group of overbearing parents began to turn her confident words from last night into mere echoes of doubt. As she meticulously prepared her notes for the PTA meeting, Sarah couldn't shake the fear of being belittled again.
The vivid memory of being interrupted by that same woman during the last meeting surfaced.
Sarah traced the edge of her notes, contemplating the perfect articulation of her thoughts, the right moments when to assert herself, and yet, even as she practiced quietly, she felt a familiar gnawing feeling in the pit of her stomach.
The hours dragged on.
Jacob buzzed with excitement over his upcoming playground visit and kept breaking her concentration with his innocent chatter. Every innocent question flashed a bright beam of her own insecurities. Why was it so easy for him to assert himself compared to her?
"Mommy, why do you look worried?"
Jacob piped up, his playful expression tinged with concern.
Sighing, Sarah gathered her thoughts. "I'm going to a meeting today, buddy. A lot of people will be there, and sometimes it's hard for me to speak up."
Her words hung in the air, almost as if they weighed her down. He scrunched his face, seeming to ponder her admission seriously.
"You told me to practice. You just need to pretend they're toys."
A soft chuckle escaped her lips, and just like that, the tension eased. His naive perspective on her anxiety reminded her of their practice. Perhaps the imagination Jacob applied to his world could serve as a tool for her own.
"Okay, let us pretend," she said, the decision rippling through her.
"You can be all the parents, and I'll be the brave mommy." They settled into the role play, laughter punctuating Sarah's nervousness with each dialogue. She could visualize herself standing strong among the line of figurative toy parents, confident enough to voice her dissatisfaction or assert her point. With each interaction, she shifted from a childless game to real preparation, realizing that she needed to produce similar energy during the actual meeting. As the minutes passed, she focused on her breath. Frustration was replaced by a palpable anticipation, yet her mind raced with questions. What if she faltered? What if they dismissed her? She realized that sitting in her fear only amplified it. The ambivalence of her uncertainties began to evolve. She leaned into it, allowing insights to come forth.
Time slipped by before she realized it was time to go.
With Jacob's final encouragement seeping into her thoughts, she hugged him tightly.
"Remember what we practiced, Mommy. You can tell them what you think."
Stepping outside, she whispered affirmations to herself, replaying phrases that had felt empowering in moments of practice. As she approached the school, a swell of nervous energy turned her initial trepidation into an electric determination. The evening sun painted the school facade in warm hues, and as she walked through the doors, her heart raced with a unique combination of anticipation and resolve. Moments later, she was seated at the table, her notes arranged meticulously in front of her. The hum of conversation enveloped her as parents mingled. A quick glance toward the woman who had silenced her previously nearly set off a wave of panic. Memories of her own anxiety crept in, but she took a breath, and there it was again. Jacob's exuberant face flashed in her mind. Then she noticed it, a subtle flicker of recognition. Other parents were also uneasy, their whispered conversations colored with a mix of anxiety and excitement. Initially lost within her fears, she caught snippets of others' thoughts, and a flicker of the humanness of it all paused her heart. She would not simply be a passive participant today. This was her opportunity to lead with integrity and authenticity, not just for herself, but for Jacob as well.
As the meeting
unfolded, the moments neared to speak, anticipation crackling through her veins.
The moment of truth lay within reach. Would she embrace the energy they had played with, or would she succumb to the doubts that threatened to resurface? And just as her turn approached, the voice inside her echoed louder and clearer than it ever had before. Would the new Sarah emerge from the shadows, ready to confront what lay ahead? The future waited, the moment of courage was now. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as the moment she had rehearsed and anticipated drew closer. A glance around the room revealed the expectant eyes of the other parents, each pair reflecting their own insecurities and hopes. They were not merely a sea of opposition, they were individuals, much like her. With that realization coursing through her, she felt a thread of connection rather than isolation. The woman who had previously reduced her to silence sat across from her, her expression guarded. But Sarah refused to allow the shadow of past humiliation to cloud her judgment. Instead, she centered her thoughts on her goal, to communicate effectively, not just to be heard, but to be understood. This was more than self-advocacy. It was about creating an environment for Jacob and all the children at the school, an essence of shared values that transcended their differences.
When the moderator turned to her, calling her name, Sarah's stomach fluttered, then anchored itself with a surge of confidence. She stood with a clarity that surprised her, smoothing her blouse, an instinctive gesture to regain focus. "I wanted to address some concerns about our school's policies on recess," she began, her voice steady, punctuated by a softness that drew attentiveness rather than defensiveness. As the words poured from her, she poured herself into them, allowing her passion to come alive. She spoke not as an overbearing parent but as a fellow advocate for their children's well-being. She articulated the importance of making space for play, of allowing children to let off steam so their minds could focus on learning. Time seemed elastic. In that moment, she became both the architect and the inhabitant of a world she had only dreamt of creating. The laughter she had shared with Jacob in roleplay trickled back into her memory, empowering her to rise above the fear of judgment. When she finished speaking, a hush fell over the room, punctuated by murmurs of agreement rather than the anticipated resistance. To her astonishment, the woman who had interrupted her before nodded with a glimmer of appreciation in her eyes. "You've raised valid points, Sarah," she conceded. "Perhaps we've overlooked aspects of our children's experience." In that instant, a new layer of tension fell away, revealing the potential for collaboration. Sarah felt a rush of gratitude ripple through her. She had not only articulated her thoughts but had sparked a constructive dialogue, a direct contrast to her previous experiences. This was not merely about winning a battle, it was about co-creating a supportive environment. As the discussion continued, Sarah became increasingly aware of her own capacity to lead conversations. She began to mentor others gently, drawing out their opinions and facilitating discussions that encouraged more parents to contribute. This unexpected role brought a sense of exhilaration. For the first time, she saw herself not just as a participant but as a core component of the decision-making process. By the end of the meeting, resolutions were proposed, and a plan was set in motion to examine recess policies. The shared hope and enthusiasm painted the atmosphere with possibility, transforming a room filled with cautious energy into one of fellowship. She didn't feel like the timid woman who once sat alone weighed down by doubt. Instead, she emerged as a leader, confident in her ability to articulate her values, driven by a compelling need to champion Jacob's and every child's right to a fulfilling school experience. As parents gradually filed out, Sarah felt a rush of emotion well within her: relief, accomplishment, and something she hadn't anticipated, a burgeoning sense of self-worth. She glided through the school hallway, each step echoing her newfound purpose. The weeks ahead promised challenges, but she now understood that each hesitation held the potential to ignite a pivotal moment of growth. Just as she reached the exit, a thought struck her heart, a realization that, while she had tackled one fear, others remained unaddressed. How would she sustain this newfound courage in the face of adversity? That unease ignited an urge to confront another lingering terror that shadowed her: speaking to Jacob's teacher about broader educational philosophies. But this time, she carried the confidence of tonight's meeting with her, and she steeled herself for the next challenge on her horizon. The following days after the meeting unfolded with an odd mix of anticipation and anxiety. Sarah found herself reflecting on the power of her voice, how it resonated through the room and had caught the attention of those around her. The thought of approaching Jacob's teacher sent ripples of doubt through her, but the lingering memory of her previous success pressed her forward. This time, the task felt more complex. She wasn't simply advocating for time to play, she was navigating the intricate world of educational philosophies that encompassed Jacob's learning and future. The morning of the meeting arrived, each tick of the clock echoing in her mind, amplifying her unease. She dressed meticulously, each piece in armor reflecting her renewed confidence. A crisp blouse, neatly pressed slacks, shoes that shined with an intention that foreshadowed her purpose. In the mirror, she rehearsed her opening words like a mantra, unwilling to let uncertainty untether her growing resolve. Upon entering the classroom, she was struck by its vibrant colors and the air thick with creativity. Posters displaying different learning modalities adorned the walls. Even with this comforting environment, Sarah felt like an interloper in a world full of seasoned educators. She quietly took a seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, reminding herself of what was at stake not just for Jacob, but for herself. When the teacher entered, her presence exuded calm professionalism, a stark contrast to the churning emotions within Sarah. "What brings you in today, Sarah?" she asked, her tone inviting but focused. In that moment, Sarah knew the threshold of vulnerability awaited her, the potential for growth looming large. I wanted to discuss Jacob's learning experience, particularly how different educational philosophies shape our approach to his development, she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. The teacher's demeanor shifted slightly, intrigue lighting her features as they dove into a dialogue that tested Sarah's resolve and understanding. As they navigated through various educational theories, constructivism, critical pedagogy, Sarah felt the weight of the discussion transform into an opportunity for genuine exchange. It wasn't just a matter of voicing her opinions, it was about grasping the complexities of how such frameworks impacted not only Jacob but all children. Each time the teacher posed a question, Sarah could feel her comprehension deepening, her passion igniting with each answer she provided. But there was a moment when the teacher brought up the potential drawbacks of too much unstructured play. The comment hit Sarah with the force of a wave crashing on shore, threatening to engulf her newfound confidence. She hesitated, mind racing with the fear of sounding defensive or uninformed. Yet, beneath that trepidation, a newfound conviction bubbled up, a quiet voice that urged her to stand firm.
If we focus solely on structure, we might forget the importance of creativity in learning, Sarah finally said, her voice laced with conviction.
Children need the freedom to explore their interests, otherwise, we risk stifling their natural curiosity. The teacher's expression shifted, surprise mingling with respect as she considered Sarah's perspective. In that space, Sarah realized that standing up for what she believed could create dialogue, not just conflict. The brief moment of internal struggle opened a door within herself, a realization that her thoughts were not only valid but essential. The meeting concluded with a promise of follow-up, the teacher expressing her appreciation for Sarah's insights. As she exited the classroom, Sarah felt a rush of exhilaration. She had danced on the precipice of vulnerability, and instead of backpedaling into silence, she had shouted into the void, her words echoing back with respect.
The drive home was a blur. Excitement coursed through her veins while deeper questions began to emerge. What would be the next step in this journey of self-advocacy?
Who else in her life would benefit from her
growing voice?
Just as she pulled into her driveway, another realization struck her: if she could confront challenges in these discussions, would she dare to tackle her own hesitations regarding Jacob's educational path, perhaps even exploring the idea of advocating for broader systemic changes? That question lingered, setting the stage for another elevation of her journey, as she pondered the steps she would take next to continue shaping not only Jacob's future but her own as well. The days that followed the meeting with Jacob's teacher became a crucible for Sarah, testing the limits of her resolve and awakening a myriad of thoughts regarding her role as a mother and an advocate. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she found herself grappling with the implications of her newfound voice. In the quiet solitude of her living room, surrounded by the remnants of Jacob's playful chaos, she felt both empowered and hesitant. The concept of unstructured play lingered in her mind, but it was the potential to address deeper issues, ones that reached beyond her child's immediate needs, that truly captivated her. She began to question traditional notions of education, wondering if the system might be failing not only students like Jacob but countless others whose needs were often overlooked.
Was she ready to dive into these murky waters?
Determined to expand her understanding, Sarah devoured books on educational reform and modern parenting techniques, each page pulling her further into a world she had only touched on. With every chapter, her questions multiplied. How could she channel her advocacy into constructive actions? Would the school administration be receptive to ideas that challenged the status quo? One afternoon, while sifting through a stack of educational literature, she stumbled upon an online forum where parents shared experiences and pushed for change within their local school systems.
It was a revelation she wasn't alone in this journey.
The stories she read resonated with her, echoing her struggles and triumphs in fighting for her child's educational rights. The hope that flickered within her was now fueled by a sense of community and shared purpose. That evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, a blank notepad in front of her. She began mapping out her thoughts, her frustrations with the educational system morphing into concrete ideas aimed at sparking change. With each bullet point, she felt her confidence solidifying. Advocacy groups and parents like her were not just voices calling for change, they were potential allies in a much larger mission.
But there remained the nagging question: how to approach them without sounding naive?
As the sun set, the dim light illuminated the determination on her face. She didn't just want to advocate for Jacob, she wanted to be a catalyst for broader systemic changes that could benefit countless families. Yet, the enormity of that ambition also intimidated her. Would she risk her comfort for a cause that might not yield immediate results? Faced with this dilemma, Sarah felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with potential conflicts and the challenge of confronting well-established norms. But beneath the fear lay a burgeoning excitement. Each small step in this progression of personal and professional development was leading her to a more profound understanding of not just education but of herself. She paused, pen hovering over the paper, contemplating a crucial decision: to connect her blossoming ideas with local advocacy groups or to keep them close, safe from the potential judgment of others. That moment of reflection was electrifying. Pushing herself past the confines of her previous self, Sarah took a deep breath and wrote her first sentence: "I want to change the conversation about education in my community." As she put down the pen, a sense of clarity washed over her. The voice that had once quivered was now imbued with purpose, echoing the sentiment that it was time to step out of the shadows. However, unknown challenges awaited in correspondence with the advocacy groups. What would she discover when she turned her words into action? The days unfolded into weeks, carrying Sarah deeper into new territories of empowerment and advocacy. Each morning began with a renewed sense of ambition, her path defined by a single notion: she would not only fight for Jacob but also strive to ignite change in their community's educational system. The forum discussions she had joined rippled with fervor, echoing parents' pleas for reforms that would address the broader needs of children. Each story and idea exchanged within those digital walls magnified her own mission, creating a wellspring of inspiration. And so began Sarah's commitment to transform her fears into action. She booked a meeting with the school board, determined to articulate her vision. However, with each tick of the clock leading up to the date, her anxiety began to churn. What if she encountered resistance? Would they dismiss her ideas? But for the first time, rather than succumbing to her self-doubt, she reminded herself of the fortitude she had demonstrated during the PTA meeting. She would muster all she had learned from both her father's Stoic lessons and her experiences with Jacob. This was not merely about voicing concerns, it was an opportunity to enact constructive change. On the day of the meeting, Sarah dressed deliberately, selecting an outfit that instilled confidence and allowed her to embody the strength she had curated. As she entered the school board's conference room, the familiar wave of apprehension threatened to wash over her. Yet, she steadied her breath, focusing on the transformative journey that had brought her to this very moment. The room quieted as she presented her ideas, flowing seamlessly from the importance of play to the need for individualized learning strategies. She kept her voice strong, reflecting the energy she had practiced in countless role-plays with Jacob. Education should meet each child's unique needs, she asserted, making eye contact with several members of the board. She detailed the flaws in the existing system and presented her vision and initiative to incorporate more flexible, student-led learning opportunities. This was the core belief she had held for so long, and it was finally taking form as a tangible proposal. Feedback from the board members began flowing, not as an avalanche of negativity, but rather with measured curiosity. Questions arose, and a dialogue ensued. They wanted to know how they could implement these changes, how they could co-create an environment where no child felt cornered or stifled. In that moment, Sarah realized that she was no longer just a voice among many, but a respected member of the conversation, a conduit for many parents who felt silenced. The weight of her advocacy began to coalesce around a common goal, forging bonds stronger than the fears that had once held her back. After a series of discussions, Sarah stepped away from the meeting buoyed, her heart racing with invigorating possibilities. As she left the school grounds, she caught a glimpse of Jacob in the playing field, laughing with his friends. The sight made her heart swell. This was why she fought, to ensure he thrived in an environment that recognized his individuality and nurtured his growth. Weeks turned into months, and as Sarah continued her advocacy, she saw ripples of change begin to form. Parents rallied behind her vision, forming an advocacy group dedicated to educational reform. Volunteers stepped forward, igniting campaigns that fostered awareness of the educational system's shortcomings, battling against rigidity with stories of resilience. Jacob blossomed too, watching his mother assert herself as an advocate. He began asserting his voice at school, empowered by their shared commitment to boundaries and self-worth. The dynamic between them shifted as they navigated challenges together, breaking cycles of fear and exposure that had once held them hostage. There was a pivotal moment during a community meeting where Jacob stood up, echoing words his mother had shared countless times. "It's important to feel safe at school," he spoke boldly, a reflection of his growth. Sarah stood at the back, her heart swelling with pride. She recognized that together, they were crafting pathways toward authentic learning experiences not just for themselves, but for every child. In the midst of these transformations, recognition from the school board materialized. Sarah received an official commendation for her relentless pursuit of meaningful educational reform. It was a testament to her evolution from uncertainty to confident advocacy, bolstering her steadiness and proving that her voice mattered. The thrill of active engagement ignited a contagious momentum, leading to plans for workshops, community forums, and a collaborative network focused on child-centric education. The ambivalence of that once timid woman receded into the past. Each experience fortified her belief in herself. She had transformed, not merely for herself, but for Jacob and countless others who deserved a nurturing learning environment. Moments of self-reflection depicted her as both a mother and a trailblazer, paving the way toward a brighter future. Looking back, Sarah realized that the turning point had come when she embraced her journey and looked toward a shared cause. Now she carried the lessons her father imparted as both a guide and testament to her strength. As she tucked Jacob into bed one night, their shared conversations echoed in her mind. "We can face anything together, right?" he asked, eyes sleepily fluttering. "Absolutely," she replied, a smile gracing her face. "Together, we'll set our own boundaries and champion what matters most." With a sense of fulfillment enveloping her, Sarah closed the door softly, knowing the journey had just begun. She stood at the threshold of endless possibilities and empowerment that would resonate for years to come, leading her confidently into the uncharted future. You need to subscribe now if you want to keep following these transformative stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm because every click counts. Comment below your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the hope and empowerment.